when we went to a bunch of retailers to speak to them about e-commerce, I think one of the biggest pushbacks was this market is different. People in Dubai love to shop in malls. We have the best malls in the world. Why do we need an online fashion retailer? And so there was a lot of just uncertainty around the model and the viability of in this market. Again, retailers were not convinced. And so it was a lot of work to try to get retailers on our side on one end and consumers on to believe that this is real on the other.
Hosam Arab, Faraz Khalid, and Hisham Zarka started moving forward together in 2011. The three men founded Namshi, one of the first companies to provide an online lifestyle destination for fashion and beauty here in the MENA region. Namshi revolutionized the way online retail was approached, offering fast delivery and easy returns in an age when that was anything but common. The three founders went their separate ways in 2019 when Emaar fully acquired the company, with Hissam going on to found payment platform Tabby, and Faraz and Hisham leveraging their Namshi expertise to shepherd e-commerce juggernaut Noon. Hello and welcome to Homegrown DXB, the show taking you inside the lives of the people changing yours right here in Dubai. I'm your host, Emaar. And I'm delighted to have with me today Hosam Arab, Hisham Zarka, and of course Faraz Khalid, the co-founders of Namshi. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Now, of course, you guys have moved on to new adventures now. Hissam, you are the CEO and founder of Tabby, another hugely successful venture. You guys are moved on to Noon, also doing great things there. But I want to take this opportunity to really talk about Namshi, how you guys all came together, how you met, how you launched it at a time when sort of e-commerce was less ubiquitous than it is now, obviously, here in the Middle East and Dubai. So I guess first question, I always like to ask this of co-founders. How did you guys all meet?
Yeah, back in 2010, e-commerce was not a thing in the region. Startups were not a thing in the region. There were no like startup hubs. There was no like VCs really in the region. And to the extent that anything really got going in the region, it was mostly, you could say, VCs from US or Europe that had early success there and were looking to go international. So maybe you can say the godfather of that trend was Oliver Semler. He was a German entrepreneur turned investor who had some early success in Germany. And he was like, oh, like e-commerce is a thing in Germany. It's going to be a thing everywhere. So why, let's invest in companies sort of all across the world doing this sort of thing. And so as part of, so he set up an incubator rocket to just launch a bunch of e-commerce startups, basically in a bunch of different geographies. And so I think all of us in various ways kind of got pulled into that orbit. At first, actually, we were all running different businesses between Dubai and Turkey as part of that. And so
it was under the rocket umbrella, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so we all met basically in that kind of universe. I don't actually know exactly the stories of how Hosam and Faraz kind of got pulled in, but I'll say for myself, there was a Syrian German guy, Enes, who went to university with some people who had done some startups in Germany. He had been connected to Oliver, and he at some point randomly reached out to me on LinkedIn asking about the company I was working with. And and then he was like, oh, why don't you, I'm thinking about starting this thing instead. Why don't you come do it with me? And so that's kind of how I got sucked into the sort of universe. And then I think the first memory I really have of Hosam is sitting with Enes. Enes was trying to convince you to join us also, and I was,
yeah. And what were you doing at Rocket before that?
So I wasn't at Rocket. I had just quit a corporate role in Abu Dhabi prior to moving to Dubai. Moved to Dubai with the idea of setting something else up, and got a call from Rocket. And the call from Rocket was very unexpected, but essentially I realized later how they did their screening. They looked at a few
screening
their criteria. The criteria was either you're an HBS, Stanford, Wharton grad, or you're a McKinsey, Goldman Sachs employee.
Which bucket did you?
I was HBS only.
Okay.
And so they reached out saying, hey, listen, we're looking for someone to start a fashion e-commerce business with us. I wasn't too interested. I had already decided,
not at all interested.
I was not at all interested. I had already decided to do something else on my own, and it took a bunch of convincing. But
Enes was extremely. I was sure that you were. I was like, why? Like Hosam, yeah. Anyway, he was very convincing. So props to him.
Hisham made an offer that Hosam couldn't refuse.
Good. Oh, what about you, Faraz?
I was at Wharton, so I qualified.
So that's your qualification. Okay,
Yeah,
great. But again, like, were you in this initial meeting, or
No, so I was at business school, and yeah, sort of Rocket came and sort of presented. There was a bunch of places. I'd just gotten married, and my wife had a job in Dubai. She really liked living in Dubai, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, let me try this. So at the time, I was gold on Emirates because I used to go between India and the US a lot, and we had to go to Morocco for a trip. So I decided, like, to retain gold, I had to, like, fly through Dubai. So I was like, let me go give Rocket a try. So we flew from New York to Dubai. And
that was your main motivation, maintaining gold? So, of course, yeah.
Fly Emirates. So no, that's what happened. I got into a bunch of these conversations, and then I was working on a different venture. I was working on a general merchandise sort of marketplace called Mizado. We'll talk more about it, but yeah, I mean that's the general story of how I got pulled into Rocket, and long story short, we're here.
So you all got pulled into Rocket in various ways, shape, or form. Some people more enthusiastic, perhaps, than others, which is fine. But then, when you were all there, I guess, what eventually convinced you to do this fashion e-commerce thing? How did the idea for Namshi come about? Whose idea was it? And eventually, what appealed to each of you, and what made you decide that this is a good thing to do?
I mean, to be honest, at the beginning, we kind of did a little bit of everything. So I think that the thesis was e-commerce is going to be a thing like everywhere. So let's just do a bunch of e-commerce and kind of see what sticks. And so as part of that, I was running some businesses in Turkey along with Iyad and Hussein were kind of there. Faraz ended up kind of running Mizada, which was the general merchandise thing here. And Hussein was actually kind of running Namshi from the early days sort of over here. And, so like at the beginning we were like, we'll launch all these things. We didn't know what we didn't know. And what happened was in mid 2012, Facebook IPO'd. And actually, initially, the Facebook IPO didn't go very well. And the implication was a lot of VCs and kind of investors in general, kind of the US and Europe, were like, oh, this like tech sector like doesn't really make sense. Like we should, stop investing in kind of some of the riskier sort of investments. And obviously kind of like doing e-commerce, which is relatively, which is not a capital light business in emerging markets, is like pretty high on the list of like, risky kind of ventures. So at some point we basically, we didn't, we weren't going to have funding to kind of keep running all the things that we were doing. So a lot of them ended up shutting down, which was a very painful process. But Namshi, of all the things that had launched, was the one that kind of made the most sense. And so, because, in fashion, you have generally higher margins and, all this kind of stuff. So that was the one where we kind of, everything else was like, yeah, there's no way we're going to break even on the cash that we have in any of these businesses. But Namshi, like, maybe could happen. And so, Faraz and I kind of separately, along with the folks that were with us at the time and those respective businesses, shut those businesses down. And then kind of.
What was that like? You said it was painful. Was that, did at the time, were you confident in Namshi as the right alternative when these other businesses were closing down, when there was this sense that maybe this wasn't going to pan out?
Look, I mean, 2012 e-commerce was still like in its infancy in the region, right? Like cash on delivery was not a solved sort of product, and 80%, 90% of our orders were cash on delivery. So there was a lot to do, and like Hisham said, I think it had the highest chances of surviving. And I think our strategy was to like take a very long, deep breath and keep our head down for a very long period of time. And I think that's what we've been at it, actually.
So Hisham, then what were those early days at Namshi like? Because Hisham was just saying that you were, I think, one of the first people really running at the company at that point, right? What were those early days like? What was that experience like, again, in such a new space here in the Middle East?
So, I mean, early on, when we went to a bunch of retailers to speak to them about e-commerce, I think one of the biggest pushbacks was this market is different. People in Dubai love to shop in malls. We have the best malls in the world. Why do we need an online fashion retailer? And so there was a lot of just uncertainty around the model and the viability of in this market. Again, retailers were not convinced, and so it was a lot of work to try to get retailers on our side on one end and consumers on to believe that this is real on the other. I mean, one of the early stories I remember, is we had customers calling us saying, "Hey, listen, I've just seen this pair of shoes online. Where can I come and see it?" Right, and that was
shop?
Where's the shop? I like it, but I'd like to come and touch it. And so there was a lot of education in those early days around just what this is and how this could work. And then beyond that, some of the challenges that Faraz mentioned around just the nascency of the infrastructure, right? So cash on delivery was big. Online payments were just nearly non-existent. Delivery and logistics infrastructure was relatively poor as well. And so it was just figuring all that stuff out. Now, the nice thing is, given the fact that the market was so nascent, we had relatively no competition. And so we had all the time in the world, or at least sufficient time to figure things out and learn
because we had
make mistakes.
no idea what we were doing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, all of us we're coming from completely different setups, unrelated setups. I mean, I'm an engineer by
Did
training.
any of you have any fashion e-commerce background?
Neither fashion nor e-commerce.
Faraz had done a startup, actually.
Yeah, I'd done a startup, but it was far away from fashion. And I think, look, the dynamics were very tricky. Frankly, like fashion e-commerce around the world was still very new. And there were only a few stories like Zappos and maybe Zalando and ASOS that were sort of like leading. Beyond that, in developing market, there was almost nothing that you could point to and say that's working. And I think part of the fun was to figure it out. And I think most of the early years that I remember were just around sort of throwing a lot of things at the wall, hoping they stick, but having fun and learning. And it really felt like it was the school of life, but we also sort of, I think in a way it was like a nursery for a lot of the sort of early consumer internet talent in the region. The thing I remember sort of like most vividly is that, now you can sort of find people who've done something similar around the world. At the time, it was just sort of, we were hiring generalists and sort of hoping that they get like, they figure it out and we figure it out. But there was almost no talent in the region that you could sort of bring in to sort of do what we were trying to do. And frankly, even globally, it was just not a solved sort of proposition.
Finding digital marketing
it's
talent was just nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Also, it wasn't considered really like all that cool yet. Like now I feel like there's a whole like cool startup kind of vibe, but at the time
Didn't have the cool startup Silicon Valley vibe when you
I
guys
think
were doing it?
in Silicon Valley you had it, but like in the region, especially if you're going to like Sam said, like retailers and you're trying to convince them that you're legit, they're like, I don't know, like you guys seem kind of sketchy. Like I remember like Aramex just when we first signed up with Aramex, like they didn't really know what to make of us. I don't know that they took us like very seriously to start, but it was just no one.
It had to take a couple of big brands to make the leap and say maybe we'll give you a shot, but until then it was just uncharted territory.
Yeah.
So when did people start taking you seriously? When did you notice that shift?
Look, I feel like we felt that we were doing good work for a long time. But now that we look at when we hit like even 1,000 orders a day, it was like it was many years later.
When did you hit 1,000 orders a day?
It was
Like
2014.
It was a couple of years.
Like a few years in.
Yeah, and
It took time.
but honestly, like
Actually, we used to, every time we'd hit a new like 1,000, then 2,000, 3,000, we'd like take a picture, like
rearrange furniture in the office, and
we'd like celebrate. Which now we hit 1,000 order records, like very
number
very
of times a
regularly.
day.
Yeah, exactly. But back then it was like that first 1,000 orders took 2 years.
It was special. It was really, really special.
Yeah, but if you met us
and every other 1,000 was special as well, right? Like it was.
so it was cool because
How many photos do you guys have?
we had a
7?
few photos, 7 or 8 photos. Yeah.
So
Not many.
You got to 8,000-9,000. You're like, okay.
No, but the cool part was that if you met us in 2013, we weren't very large, but we thought we were working on interesting stuff, and we were the juice. Like it was like really,
We were having a lot of fun.
we were having a lot of fun. And
Actually, we enjoyed the thought of being kind of small. Like, Oliver used to call us the Middle Eastern ants. That was his nickname. Like, as in small, like.
I think he's still.
It doesn't sound like a compliment.
No, it was not.
But comparing to his other ventures globally, it was we were small, we were tiny.
He invested in fashion e-commerce companies in like Russia and Brazil, which were much larger.
India.
Yeah, India. And they had like procurement departments, which we thought was hilarious. We're like, what do you need a procurement?
Yeah,
Now we know. But like, yeah.
No, he probably still calls us Middle Eastern ants.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about it is, yes, we were small, but but it was the company that turned out to have performed the best within that entire portfolio globally, right? And we'll talk about that a bit more.
I mean, talk about it a little more. Like, how did you before? That's fine. Toot your own horn. Tell me, how did you beat out Brazil and Russia?
I think one of the things that differentiated our business versus some of the others is we had very little funding perpetually, right? It was from the get-go, we weren't giving that much funding because, again, it was a small market. And so we had to make do with what we had across the board. And so this was a business that was built very sustainably from early days. And it continued with that sustainability in mind up until we got to the point where we weren't really ants anymore, right? We were large, cockroaches.
Cockroaches. I mean, they are very resilient.
I wouldn't have gone with that insect, but yeah.
But we were one of the bigger ones globally, and we were profitable. So I think there was a lot more attention on us at some point in time. And at some point it became unwanted attention. So we got to the point where, and I think this is part of the journey that we went through at Namshi, is the investors decided that they wanted a viable exit for fashion e-commerce globally. And so what they ended up doing is putting a number of their largest companies globally under a single umbrella, global fashion group. And we went in that direction. So
until then, we were operating basically fully independently. Like we were just doing what we kind of wanted. We were kind of getting close to the point where we were kind of break even / cash flow positive. So, no one could really tell us because I mean, in these sorts of things, if you need money, like someone, and anyway, so if you don't need money,
if
you have a lot of independence.
You're beholden to someone.
Exactly.
Right? Of course.
Yes. And so, but when they went in this direction, kind of, they were like, I remember I don't remember some of it was like, maybe we should have like one central app team that builds an app for all the countries. And then they had all sorts of crazy ideas. And we were like, used to running our own show. We're like, we are having none of this. So that was
it's a small sort of tightly run ship, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Control your own destiny, right? And that changed, quite considerably once we went under this kind of single umbrella group. All of a sudden, that autonomy went away. We had a boss. We weren't used to having a boss.
I mean, at least our boss thought he was our boss.
That was.
And joke's on him, right? Before that, I want to go back to that scrappy period that you were talking about. We were throwing everything at the wall to figure out what sticks, and talk about obviously a lot of it stuck. Obviously, things went well. But I want to hear a little bit about maybe some of the mistakes that you made while you were figuring things out.
Yeah, look, I mean, like Hosam said, we were perpetually underfunded. So we never had resources to make really large mistakes. So at best there were experiments that we sort of like dabbled in, but also like the origin story is such that both Hisham and I had been through so much pain, like shutting a company down when you're like, when we barely started out.
I think more accurately, we put a lot of other people through a lot of pain, which
that's true. Yeah, and like that, I remember sort of like I play that conversation back to myself like every other day, and those are like still like you remember that stuff, right? Like you stand in front of people and saying, sorry, we ran out of resources. Not an easy thing to say. And it caused.
And more specifically, I know I just convinced you to quit your job last month.
Yeah.
And I told you that this was like the best idea in the world, and there was no chance we were going to fail, and this was going to be amazing, and like all this stuff. And like
there were people who'd quit their jobs, and we shut down before they could start.
Yeah.
So it was, and it wasn't an easy market to sort of like land on your feet on, particularly in this region. So, given that sort of background, we were careful, and I feel like part of the fun was to sort of hack and improvise and figure out a path to profitability and elegance and sort of craftsmanship that gets us to break even. And we're very focused on it. I think.
Although I would say in that kind of before we fully learned all those lessons, Egypt was
we did. So I think.
Was that the first territory you expanded into?
Outside the GCC.
Yeah. Outside the GCC.
Yeah. I think the meta theme there is that sort of in our desire to sort of grow GMV, we expanded into a market using a delivery mode that was not sort of mature, and we started shipping orders cash on delivery into Egypt. and turns out it was a bad idea. And that, I think, is the one thing.
Why was it a bad idea?
So, I mean, cash on delivery in general, sort of back 10 years ago now, half the orders would get delivered, the rest would come back. You'd pay the courier company for the way to the country and back.
And customs at the Egyptian border. Yeah.
Customs at the Egyptian border, like stuff wouldn't come back. If it came back, you couldn't resell it. It would come back months later and it was out of season. So it was...
It was a costly mistake.
It was a costly mistake, but luckily we sort of, we survived. And I think in terms of...
that was like the first thing Faraz, like as a detective, went to figure out after, like when moving from Izado to Namshi, right? Like that was your...
I remember Faraz walking into the Namshi office with a stack of Aramex invoices, and put on his detective hat and literally just went through these invoices manually to figure out where things were going wrong.
Like we had no idea, you know, in business school you take like an accounting course and you learn about like receivables and stuff, and like this was like you'd ship something out, you're expecting cash to come in, and it doesn't come in, you're just like, what's going on? Like what's and it seems very dumb in retrospect. It seems like it should have been obvious, but I think it took...
But we were dumb. Like, what, you know, you're also seeing the numbers grow on the one side. So you're beholden to these numbers. You're like, wow, we're growing. We're doing extremely well. But then on the other side of it, there's no cash coming in. So
you're like, not the kind of growth we're really looking for.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a good sort of on-ramp for my next question, which is, you know, as you're seeing the business grow, you're 1,000, 2,000, you're taking your photographs. How do you then decide, you know, as this is new to you guys and it's new to the region, like when do you expand? When do you look to other countries? When do you add new verticals, new products? Like how were those decisions taken? Obviously, in the case of Egypt, you know, it was maybe premature. But you know, how did that work with other markets?
Yeah, so we didn't really see a new market as the growth opportunity that we wanted to go after. It was, I think the learning from Egypt was we're in a very interesting market ourselves. The opportunity in the markets that we operated in was big enough, and so let's just double down and focus on that. The other learning for us was just when we are experimenting, let's experiment small. By definition, they should be experiments, and so let's experiment small, test the market, test the waters with the customers, and then go from there. So you know, in terms of new growth opportunities that we went after, it started looking more like category growth than anything else. We experimented with beauty. Beauty was a hit, and we scaled that. Homeware was another one where we started seeing some demand coming in on some small trinkets, and over time that grew. But yeah, I mean, that was where we ended up focusing our attention. It was much more, we're in the right markets, let's double down on the UAE, Saudi, and a couple of other GCC markets, and then expand our offering from there.
And the whole time through, we've kind of, you know, there were just so many things broken around that it wasn't like you were running out of things to fix and work on that were like not obvious. You know, you didn't get to the point where you're like, you know, we need to start shipping furniture, like, or, you know,
true. There were so many obvious, embarrassing things around that you needed to fix.
Like what?
I mean,
CSL.
I mean, lots of stuff. We, all the customer service emails used to sort of, all this, the customer service team used to, email every single customer email to the group.
But like if a customer called and said, hey, I have this problem,
they would email CS all.
They would email like all the CS agents, so that if the customer called again, the CS agent could search their inbox, and like that's how the ticketing stuff would work, which is a terrible system. Like you're just like,
so every single complaint would go to every agent.
Can you delete that? No,
including the like, hey, someone please follow up with this customer. Like, of course, no one was following up.
There was a lot of very interesting stuff. We built our warehouse. We built the warehouse management system. Yes. We went to Dragon Mart and bought racks, and we learned to run it. And then, I mean, you know, it sounds like a way of life now, but at some point during the Namshi journey, like, someone asked us to build an app, and it wasn't clear to us if apps would be a thing or not.
Well, they weren't yet.
I thought it was a great idea.
At this point, it was just the website, right?
It was just a website. Apps were there for, you know, booking holidays and things like that, nobody was shopping on apps.
Yeah, it was.
And it was.
Which year was this?
This was 2013, 2014. So apps were non-existent for shopping, or at a very small scale.
And I was pushing for it so much, and these guys didn't believe me.
Yeah, it's true.
Why were you such a strong believer?
He was quite
not.
the contrary. Quite the contrary. So yeah, Hisham was our tech guy, and he was against it. He said, "Nobody."
Terrible idea. No one's gonna shop on
Nobody's
apps.
gonna
He
shop
told
on
Oliver that like, who will download an app to shop? But there's so much friction.
And lo and behold, 3 months in, it became 50% of our volume, and a year in, it was about 90%. So he was definitely the right guy to go to for forward-looking statements.
To this day, I have great judgment about these sorts of things.
No, I mean, it was. We went through a lot. We went through our first DDoS attack. We went through a lot of. I mean, it was fun. I mean,
What was crazy about this
What was
period?
your worst day at the office? I mean, you talked to a few things. I mean, I assume the DDoS attack was not a fun day.
I mean, I guess the shutdowns were the worst days of the office, frankly. I mean, nothing beats that, I guess. Like, hopefully there's no worse day. But yeah, I mean, to Hosam's point, I feel like when the penny dropped on us that we were going to lose this independence and pride in Namshi that there was such a central theme in our lives, and like in a way sort of the threat of losing your identity to a larger central behemoth. I feel like there was a day we were on a call with our investors, and they were sort of like walking us through these like slides where we would become a part of this larger organization. When it dawned on us, we were pretty sort of dejected and heartbroken.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I still think I have a little bit of PTSD from both like shutting down the companies and obviously telling everyone that we had spent, so much time hiring and convincing to come and, convincing that this was going to work and we were invincible and all this stuff. Like I have never once had, I don't think I've ever gotten to like 20% of the confidence that I had. Like when that,
Before that happened?
Yeah, before that happened, I was just so confident that, this of course is going to work. This is going to be great. And after that, I'm like, when I get to 20%, I'm like, oh, I need to like, calm it down. And then on the centralization stuff, like, yeah, when we felt we were losing our independent, like still to this day, kind of at noon, like the only thing I do, half of what I do at noon is like go around decentralizing things. Like that's just, I think kind of because of the PTSD, frankly, from those experiences. So yeah, I think those were rough.
When we're talking about, hearing from your own experiences, certainly, we're talking about, the startup space. There is a lot of reasons to be stressed out, right? And to have this pressure on you, both practical, real experiences, and also there's a sort of culture, around the hustle culture, working long hours, pulling all-nighters, point of pride, sort of, with that. I guess, do you guys subscribe to that as like something that you think is essential for success? And how do you deal with that ongoing stress? I mean, because you've gone through shutdowns, you've had that really happen to you, right? And I'm sure that's still there sometimes in the back of your mind as a potential for whatever business you're on.
Yeah, look, I mean, the way I think about this, and I think we should all answer it, is that we have a lot of gratitude for the opportunity that we have. Like, I mean, looking at what's happening in the world and looking at the opportunity we have, we can only be grateful. And when I step back and I look at it, I get to do very meaningful things with people I love, and I see it as a gift. And you tend to kind of like give it all. And we found a way, actually, the best part of Namshi, for me, was that you work with your best friends, and
so you guys still like each other.
Yeah, I think so. And life and work became one thing, and it wasn't painful. And I think that was, and we were just basically spending time together. It just happens that you're working, and we did have like, we had a mural on the wall that said hustle, but it was entirely optional.
Did it just say hustle? What was else?
It literally just said hustle.
Okay.
But that was as far as it went.
It was optional.
Hustle is optional. Yeah. No, I mean, we never pushed it. We never forced it down people. The idea, what we did was employ people that just felt hungry. They felt they cared about what we were building. Most of them were journalists, young, right out of university, but they genuinely did care. Right? They cared about what we were building, and they took it upon themselves to give it their all. Right? Whether that required long hours or not didn't really matter. And so we were never this kind of FaceTime culture that you will see in a lot of hustle type environments where you just need to spend the hours and show your face. It was much more about, okay, get stuff done, show us that you care. I think that was quite important, and we'll continue to build together.
I think the company at the peak, or when we exited, was maybe like 250, 300 people or so. Yeah. And so like for a lot of it, you're in the 150 to like kind of everyone knows everyone. So it's a there was a lot of hard work kind of, from us and kind of from other people. But I don't, I think the term hustle culture has a lot of connotations that, I don't think we're really there and kind of present. It was a very like
familial sort of
environment. Maybe you should ask some of our employees and see if they
agree with this.
But that's our recollection for sure.
Okay, all right.
That's how we would like them to recollect it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, speaking of recollections, you've sort of alluded to this up until now, but I'd love to know what the lead up to the exit to the sale was, and sort of what the actual day was like for you guys.
So there were a couple of lead ups, I think.
Multiple lead ups.
Multiple lead ups. What I do remember is the period around then where we actually did not, we stopped enjoying it at some point, right? And we stopped enjoying it because it was this centralized setup.
I would say we stopped enjoying work, but we really still enjoyed hanging out with one another. Which
Exactly.
Is what we were doing.
Exactly.
So when we were playing Catan.
Yeah.
We had each other's shoulders to cry on, and so that was helpful. But in all seriousness, it's just stopped being fun, and we thought that it was in our best interest to try to control our own destiny. And what that meant is, we know that this setup exists, let's look for an alternative setup. And that meant looking for potential buyers, right? And so we started having discussions within the market, primarily retailers in the market, other big family groups, etc. And a few of those went fairly far. We had a couple of false alarms where we celebrated an acquisition that never ended up happening.
Take a photo as well.
I think we did.
Hisham was our history.
I'm sure all his
documentarian.
Documentarian. So we did do that a couple of times.
We had at least like 2, maybe 3 celebrations of like things that we thought. Like,
and why did these things fall apart? Obviously, whatever specifics you can.
I think,
share.
Namshi,
one of them we celebrated prematurely. We
just didn't know. We were young. We didn't know how these things happen.
I'm sure the and folks listening. Folks who gave the offer were like, "Are you sick? They didn't expect us to." Yeah, exactly. But
it was like a first date for them.
Yeah,
you guys thought you were.
We just didn't know. We were
maybe like third date. Like we were not like so.
You weren't engaged yet.
Yeah,
we didn't know the game. But look, it had become large in the grand scheme of things. For this market, that transaction was still quite large, and we were very proud of what we'd built. But it was you needed like a lot of capital to take control of that company, and there are very few people who can do that. And I think, without getting into too much detail, we the type of people who can actually do that, you can count on like one hand. So. We were just very lucky, and we're very grateful that we found a home for Namshi, and we could do what we could do. And I think, I
just remember a huge amount of relief when we got to the end of that process, because we had been trying at that point for like a year and a half, 2 years, kind of like pretty seriously, where that was like the main channel of our energy, if you will, because we genuinely we thought that, you're always trying to de-risk your company. You kind of build it, and you're always watching out for the biggest risk. And for sure, the biggest risk was, at least, I think as we believed at the time, and I think I probably still believe, staying in that structure would have 100% killed Namshi. And so it was a big focus.
I think,
Well, look, it seems like it's borne out, right? Now, post sort of sale, and then obviously acquisition by Emaar, and then later Noon. You guys are at Noon. You've gone on to found Tabby, which is also hugely successful. I'm curious, was this something that you were thinking of, Tabby itself? Was it something you were thinking about while you were at Namshi's, or what motivated you to go and sort of start this own project?
So the exit from Namshi was kind of phased as well. What happened at the time is Emaar had bought 51% of the business. Faraz and Hisham had left onto Noon at the time, and I stayed on while Namshi was still 51% owned by Emaar. And that period, while on the one hand was lonely, the two guys had left, but also I was, I moved from one setup where I was under a corporate setup to another one where I was in a corporate setup. So it was quite important for me to kind of see this through and see the full exit through, because it absolutely stopped being fun. Right, it was really not enjoyable at all in the last couple of period.
Because we were the fun ones.
I mean, listen,
I can tell from the obviously.
The fashion element also went out.
Fashion, well, I had no one to look up to on. So yeah, I mean, I was working very hard to get that deal closed, and that was again entirely my focus, which really shouldn't be. And as soon as I left, it was another big moment of relief for myself. It was a period, 8 years where took the company from start to full exit. Was a massive accomplishment, but the last couple of years not as enjoyable. So took some time off, reflected,
drank some coffee,
and realized very quickly that I missed building. That was the part that I missed most from my time at Namshi, and so I started looking for what else to do. What stuck with me at the time was just the fact that payments were broken. 80% of our business at Namshi was always cash, despite all our efforts to change
all the way to the end.
And it moved from 80% to 70%. So very, very slow movement, despite, again, all our efforts and the fact that we thought that customers would try cash and then move away from cash. That just never happened. And so payments stuck in my mind. I'd seen the growth of a couple of similar businesses in other parts of the world, thought this could be relevant for our part of the world as well. And 3 months later, found myself starting another business.
And it's worked out pretty well, I think, for you. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
I mean, well, I guess looking at Namshi now, in retrospect, a few years on, looking at the business, sort of, how do you feel about it looking back now? How do you feel about where it is, your legacy in some cases, like as it sits today? What are your current sort of thoughts on Namshi?
Yeah, I mean, the zeitgeist of sort of the space, I feel like Namshi is one of those, like, I really feel like it's a cultural icon. Like it sort of was at the very sort of cutting edge of the consumer internet space in the country, in the region. So many of the leaders in sort of the tech space in the region are like sort of have worked with or at some point have been affiliated with Namshi. So it's had an outsized impact on the region. I feel like, when we look back, I feel like it's one of those like institutions that really shaped a lot of the talent pool. And so
did you say that you were a mentor to anyone
I don't
else?
think the word
like Iyad, who runs QLab and a bunch of other stuff, was kind of with us in that Rocket universe. So
so
like
much.
not of them, but it's just there was a lot of talent in that. Like,
and even the people that worked on the team, they've gone on to do great things at amazing companies in the region. I think just I feel like the legacy of Namshi is beyond the commercial success. And for us, I mean, we continue to run Namshi actually. So I don't know what you call like a resale, like that situation. So
how did you feel when Namshi came home to Noon, sort of, so to speak?
Yeah, it's like a homecoming type situation. So I mean, we're really proud of the fact that we still get to sort of see it through. It's a mission that continues, and obviously the competitive landscape has changed dramatically, right? Like I think we haven't talked about how difficult it is to build a fashion e-commerce company globally with the supply chain shifts with China and all that stuff happening now.
Can we talk about that? Because that's something I wanted to get into as well, which is, you guys said rightfully that when Namshi launched, there wasn't much competition.
Yep.
It was very unique, right? And that is very much not the case today, right? It's a lot of competition, both from some of the local competitors, but just from big global behemoths, whether you have like a Shein or your Amazons or otherwise. Do you think something like Namshi would succeed today? And sort of how do you compete with that stiff competition?
I think I'll start, but I think the supply chain structure is such that you'd need a ton more capital to start, even to like you'd need
not even just the supply chain, like the competitive
landscape.
environment.
Like I feel like I remember like we were one of the sort of downsides of GFG for us was that they started segment reporting Namshi revenue, and we suddenly saw an influx of competition. I feel like it was the first time we saw a lot of attention from global players, because nobody had expected a company in the Middle East to be as large as we had become. But now, like globally, it's probably one of the most competitive consumer internet segments. You've got Shein, you've got Temu, you've got all the brands that have gotten really good post-COVID to do it. The mono brand or brand.coms are very nice. So I feel like it's an incredibly fragmented sort of supply base that Namshi would if we started Namshi today, it would probably not work out.
It's been heavily disrupted, right? The Chinese have disrupted the space. People used to look for brands and pay full price for brands. Now that's not the case anymore. So I either buy a cheap Chinese product that I can recycle as many times as I want, or I'll buy discounted brands. That's where things are right now. So the margin profile of the business has changed substantially. More than that as well, just marketing spend has changed. Sure. And in the early days, we could acquire customers for tens of dollars. Today, you're acquiring customers for hundreds of dollars for a $100 spend.
I remember we were, I think, one of the first companies in the region, maybe even a little globally, to really go all in on influencer marketing. It was like we had Mansour, who we had some great talent.
Who was Mansour?
Someone on the team who shout out Mansour.
He came up with the.
Who was like we should use influencers.
Let's try this idea. Right? Like it was a
Who knew?
concept that nobody had tried before.
Okay, what year was this roughly?
This was 2014. 2014.
Or 13 even.
2013. For certainly for this region, that was still very early. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially for selling online. And so the idea was, hey, let's give this a shot. I know this one person that has an Instagram account. I don't know if it was Instagram even. It was something. And let's give it a shot. And we tried it. And
Orkut.
That dates you, my friend.
we tried it, and
MySpace.
We were trending on the U.S. App Store.
Yeah.
Let alone forget about the local app stores. The U.S. App Store was essentially people in the GCC that were on US VPN. That's how much attention that got. And we started scaling that channel after that try, and that became our biggest marketing channel. And at that point in time, nobody else was spending on influencer marketing. That was a space that we just owned and dominated for at least a year.
I think we ended up doubling down on that. The very early days of Noon as well was just sort of like using that insight and staying with it. I think. So
even 2017, 2018, that was still kind of unusual. And we had started, frankly, in 2013. And also, I remember App Store features were like a huge thing. It was, I remember, now, you'd go to the App Store in the early days and no one would know what apps to download. And Apple puts banners on various kind of pages. And so, you could just call them and be like, they actually, I don't know if what they would care about is they
who are you calling?
They'd have a marketing, but they'd launch a new iPhone. The new iPhone would have new features. And so they're looking for people to develop in their app to support these new features. And so if you kind of do it, you kind of
get featured.
You get featured. And when you get featured, your number of downloads were just, I guess a lot of people were just scrolling through the App Store looking for stuff to download. You'd see revenue jump. That stuff is
doesn't work anymore.
Doesn't work anymore at all.
Although I think those are the specific tactics we used. I mean, in the end, there was an opportunity. You had tools to kind of get there. You can still obviously do startups today and but the opportunity you're attacking is different, and the tactics used to attack it are also different.
Speaking of opportunities, I mean, you guys clearly still have a rapport. You still like each other, which, by the way, is not always the case with people who work together for this many years, through so much. Can you guys ever imagine reuniting on a project? Is that something you've ever discussed or thought about? I mean, I know you all have your businesses, your careers. Maybe it seems kind of unlikely at the moment, but is it something that you've thought about?
I think we all look forward to that day when we can hang up our boots and move on. I have this this dream of having my own coffee shop where these two baristas.
The important thing is that you own the shop and they're the baristas, right?
Hisham
Of
will make
course.
a website where you could order the coffee because he doesn't believe in apps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, listen,
I'll bring board games for the clientele. Also.
we as you mentioned, the rapport continues. We're very, very good friends. We were good friends while building it. We continue to be that way.
Actually, I would say if anything that I miss from Namshi, it's just that.
Absolutely.
Like I don't know that I miss like running the business so much as just like
Hanging out.
Yeah, coming every day, kind of hanging out, kind of. Yeah, I mean, I think we can say that our current situations are more stressful. Like even though actually Namshi had a lot of stress, it was always like there was always a certain amount of levity that came from just.
Our current jobs are more difficult.
They are.
But yeah, Namshi was. I was like, it was an innocent time, frankly. I was like,
I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
What do you think allowed you guys to maintain both the friendship and the working relationship at Namshi? Because again, that's a challenge that people sometimes face, where you have stress, you have people who have both are vying for similar positions. What do you think has been unique about you guys that allowed you both to sort of take on, or all three rather, to take on your individual roles with less ego?
Yeah, listen, I think you basically answered the question, right? I think none of us had egos, which was quite important. And each of us knew what our strengths and weaknesses were. And therefore we wouldn't step on each other's feet. He owned operations, he owned tech, I owned buying, and that's.
I also owned marketing,
and then
but I knew I was terrible at it, so it was.
But yeah, it happened. But
So
it
you
fit.
did the influencer marketing, right?
I mean, I don't know if I can take credit for it, but sure I will. Yeah, why not?
But yeah, no, listen, I mean, and that's how it worked. We respected each other's boundaries. We knew where to step in, and we take each other's opinions on pretty much everything. But it worked, right? It really, really gelled and worked. And I think we made time for seeing each other outside of the office as well. And I think we didn't have many friends beyond the three of us, right?
I feel like
What do you mean?
I'm
I'm a
sad
social
when I
butterfly?
find out that Hosam has more friends than the two of us. It's like just sad. Like he was like, yeah. Anyway, so.
But I think part of it was also kind of the way that we ended up coming back together at Namshi, because originally Hosam was kind of running it along with Lewis and Mekki. Like I was running stuff in Turkey along with kind of Iyad and Hussein and kind of Anas. Faraz was running kind of Mizat. And so but we had all kind of worked together. So when all this stuff shut down, some people were leaving, all this kind of stuff. I actually originally was not planning to go back to sort of Namshi. And I was on vacation, after shutting stuff down in Turkey. I was back home in California. And Faraz literally every day was calling me, trying to convince me to come back and okay, let's do Namshi together. I guess Hosam had already kind of convinced Faraz over, and so then and so I think the fact that we had all been through this really, really, really tough experience together, we had all worked with one another, and frankly, I think respected one another, and so I think we made a choice to kind of be together, So I think that helped a lot. And look, there were a lot of great people that were there that decided it was enough for them. And I'm grateful that, I guess the three of us.
Arranged marriage that became like a love marriage.
Most successful relationship you guys ever had, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell your wives.
I mean, Hisham's been at Namshi longer than he's been married, so.
That's true.
It's true.
Actually, one of the reasons it kind of felt familial sort of at Namshi is there were a lot of couples that sort of met at Namshi and then got married, including myself and my wife. And we have,
You moved for your wife, so
Exactly. No, I mean, it's a very special.
I think there were 4 couples made at Namshi, right?
Yeah.
Which is
so Namshi is the place for romance.
yeah, that's where you
They
meet.
could have started like a
dating website.
Tinder, I know.
That's the next business.
Next business.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, guys, thank you so much. This was, I think, a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate you being here with us on Homegrown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.